DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, we're on part 2 of our mini series here, which is why the information war will never end. Yes, never. N-E-V-E-R. Never is the information war ending. I already told you the intro to this in part 1, so if you didn't catch that one yesterday, go catch it. Let's get right into it. Point number 4. Again, the topic is why the information war will never end. Number 4, everyone is a broadcaster. I'm a broadcaster, you're a broadcaster, he's a broadcaster, she's a broadcaster, they're broadcasters, we are broadcasters, everybody. We all got our own media platforms. Back in the day, there was only a few media platforms: ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, Fox. Maybe that was pretty much it. There was a limit. Now, everybody who has a phone, everyone who has access to the internet, everyone who has access to 5G, everyone who has Wi-Fi can broadcast any information, news, ideas, opinions that they want. You cannot censor, control, and block everybody at the same time. You can censor a few. TikTok can shut me down for what I said. They can't shut down everybody. It can block me for a moment, but I file an appeal and I'm right back out there. You can't shut everything down all at the same time. Everyone is publishing at the same time, so you can't shut them all down. Which means, again, there is more information coming out than we have time to consume. Even if you use systems to try to monitor it all, it ain't going to catch everything. That's the problem. And it doesn't mean that other people are not consuming. And at the same time, even though more information is coming out than we have to consume, it doesn't mean that other people are not consuming the stuff that you don't know about. There's plenty of information and material out there that you know nothing about, but there's other people who watch it every single day and they're listening to that source every day. You never even heard of the source. Same thing when it comes to the sources that you consume. There's some people who have never heard of this show, but you listen to it every day. That's because the information is so spread out that we are not even getting info from the same sources. This is how an information wars happen, because we're all, let's say 10 different people are talking about the exact same occurrence, but they're talking about it in 10 different ways to 10 different audiences. Each of those 10 different audiences can have completely different perspectives on what happened, why it happened, and what's going to happen next, even though we're all talking about the exact same thing. Why is this? Because we all have different sources. Back in the day, there weren't 10 different sources, so there's no way this could happen. Do you understand? And more information coming out than we have time to consume. People are consuming stuff that you know nothing about, and vice versa. This is the reason why the war is over information. There are more battles happening than you even know are occurring. See, one of the things that happen within a war, you have battles. You have these small battles. All the battles add up, and eventually that makes it into the war. The thing is, there are battles happening that you don't even know about. So how can you declare a winner to a war when you don't even know who won the battle? This is the problem, if you want to look at it that way. Not only do you not know about the battle, let alone do you have time to fight. You can't fight in a battle you don't know what's happening. See, with everyone being a broadcaster with their own media platform, there are too many people putting out materials that cannot and will not be vetted, cannot all be policed, and cannot all be controlled. So what you see a lot of entities doing these days, such as medical, academia, United States government, they try to control all this by putting systems in place to block certain material from coming out, simply because these entities had decided that that material is not suited for the public to hear, see, or read. This is what they call misinformation, disinformation, or harmful material. And they put a label on it, or they try to block it, or they mark it as spam so that it just doesn't get seen, just because they decided that anything that's above this board is okay and anything below this board is not okay. I call bullshit on all this. I call bullshit on this very strongly. I told you how I feel about misinformation. Anything that you call misinformation, what should happen is that it should be allowed to be spread as far and as wide as possible. Now, why is this? You spread it as far and as wide as possible because the open marketplace of ideas will deem an idea nonsense or credible based on the response of the marketplace, not the arbitrary choice of a handful of few. That's the way I look at life in general. Let the marketplace decide what you're worth, not a handful of people say, all right, you're worth this or you're worth that. And I'm not a fan. Let's just put everybody in the open marketplace and let's just see. Give everyone an open space and open opportunity and let's see. The same thing applies in sports, applies to ideas. All information, even the information you deem to be fake news or misinformation, should be spread far and wide, and people should be allowed to decide what they want to accept versus what they don't want to accept based on their own thinking. Based on their own thinking, not based on your thinking for me, but me being able to see that thing that you tried to block. Let me see it, let me look at it, let me examine it, and let me and the rest of the group of the people, the open marketplace of people, in the marketplace of ideas, duke it out over this idea, if this is a good idea, if it's not a good idea. That's the way it's supposed to work. Good ideas win, bad ideas lose. All information should be spread far and wide. And the last thing I want is a doctor or some fucking college professor or some government bureaucrat deciding what they think is okay for me to hear or read about just because they think this is acceptable information. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Let me decide for myself what is passable information and what's not. And yes, I understand. Not every human being on the planet may be as discerning, or have as much critical thinking skill as I have, and maybe they're just not as intelligent as you are. I want the stupid people to get the same access to information that I have. If you're dumb and you're persuaded by an argument that doesn't pass the sniff test or make logical sense, okay, well, you're dumb, but that doesn't mean that you should not be allowed to consume information. Doesn't mean you can't consume information. If you decide you want to believe it, then that's your choice. I want the stupid people to have the same access to information as the smart people. All right, we have free speech in the United States of America. Nothing should be blocked because somebody thinks that you shouldn't know about it. We have free speech in America, and that means nothing should be blocked on the basis that you think somebody shouldn't know about this because you deem it to be not useful information. Well, let me decide whether something's useful for me or not. I don't want you deciding. You don't decide what I can do and what I can't do. All right, that's a fraudulent way of monitoring information. Give you an example, a little bit of an example, a parallel to this. I was at I think this was a Sprint store years ago. I think Sprint was Sprint purchased by T-Mobile. I think Sprint got gobbled up by T-Mobile recently because I used to be a Sprint customer and I did not change my companies, but now I pay my bill to T-Mobile. I think that's what happened. But years ago, I'm at a Sprint store and I believe I was getting a new iPhone and I was getting it at the Sprint store, which I don't do anymore, but I would get it straight from Apple. But anyway, as I'm standing at the counter to pay for whatever I was paying for, the girl at the counter, she was this black girl, and this place was kind of run not very sharply. There was you have the little pin pad right there in front of you where you can pay. This is before we had Apple Pays and stuff, but you put your card in and you have to say yes or no to certain things. She's going through the things. And at one point, she turns the pin pad around to her side so that she could see it, but I didn't see what she was selecting. And she pushed the button. Then she turned it back around so I could see it, but I knew all the buttons things that were being asked at that time were things for me to answer. And I called her and I said, "What did you just push? What was that you just pushed?" And she said, I was saying yes to, it was something that she did, like insurance or something like that. Some type of insurance or warranty or something like that on the phone. And I said, two things I said to her. First of all, number one, I don't want that. And number two, what you just did is illegal. You can't do that. You can't agree to something on my behalf. And I don't think she just decided randomly when I got to the counter to do that. I think she had been trained to do that. I think one of her coworkers or her boss taught her to do that and not ask the customer so that you can get them on this insurance, which costs more money and it makes the store more money and the manager more money. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And she said, well, you have to take it. And it started to be this back and forth. This happened when I was at a public storage space once. They did the exact same thing. They tried to force the insurance on me. I said, I don't fucking want it. You can't force me to buy insurance. And they try to push back and say, no, you don't. I mean, yes, you do. And we're going back and forth. Eventually, the manager gets called. And in both cases, the same thing happened. I said to the manager, I don't want that. And I called the manager out. I said, your staff is doing something that's illegal. They can't do that. And the manager, knowing that I caught them on their bullshit, they just acquiesced and said, okay, no, you don't have to do it. He doesn't have to pay for it. They took it off. And the manager went away because he knew better than to make this into an issue. Because if somebody knows that, then that person can take it a whole lot further and not get everybody in there fucked up. But anyway, I'm telling you that to tell you this, that you don't want people making these decisions on your behalf. That's the whole point. All right. Informed consent is what we call it. Informed consent is I'm making a decision based on having all the information. In 2020, going into 2021, a bunch of people got jabs in their arms of what was allegedly a vaccine. Informed consent Should have been, we don't know if this thing is going to prevent you from getting the virus, but we were told by a whole lot of people, including the heads of the Center of Disease Control, that if you take this shot, you will not get the virus, including by people in the news who allegedly are armed with quote unquote facts. If you take the shot, you won't get the virus. People took the shot, still got the virus. That is uninformed consent. People gave consent to take the shot. You didn't have to take the shot. Well, generally you didn't have to, but some people's jobs forced them to take the shot. But we were not informed. That's uninformed consent. We were informed. Actually, we were inaccurately informed consent is what a lot of people gave in 2021. Inaccurately informed consent. You were told something that you thought was the information. It turned out to not be the information. And then you gave your consent based on a lie. Somebody needs to go to jail for that. Somebody should be sued for that. As far as I'm concerned. What do you think? And again, I want to decide for myself. All right, don't tell me what I should accept just because you said it. Give me the information. Let me decide for myself. That's it. And I understand. Not everybody has the skill of discernment to do this. So what? This is the trade-off. The trade-off is if people are stupid and they end up getting burned because they're too stupid to discern what's true and what's not true, well, they have a right to be stupid. But I don't want anyone gatekeeping the information and telling me I should just accept it just because you said it. Who the fuck are you? I'm not giving that. I'm not giving consent on that. Again, this is one side of the information world upon which I take a strong stance. Point number 5. Today's topic, once again, is why the information world will never end. Number 5, algorithms reward attention over substance. I was actually just talking about this on my live stream this morning, which I do Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern on all streaming platforms. Anyone that has video streaming, I'm there. LinkedIn, TikTok, X, Rumble, Facebook, TikTok. I said TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of them. Remember that there's no such thing as a free lunch in life. And if you want to get a lot of attention based on the social media algorithm, usually you have to cut out a good amount of substance from your message. Why? Not because the algorithm doesn't necessarily like substance, but most people are not interested in substance. Most people are interested in entertainment. Entertainment is a surface level conscious engagement. Substance and education require a deeper level of conscious engagement, and absorbing and playing around mentally with any type of intellectual material requires thinking, and thinking takes effort. There is a reason why back in the days, those of you who are old enough to remember, they used to call the TV the idiot box. The reason they called it the idiot box is not because there were idiots on the TV, but because idiots watched TV. You turned on the TV so you could temporarily be an idiot, turn your brain off, and be entertained by mindless material. That's why they called the TV the idiot box. Now everything that used to be on TV is now on your phone. So the phone has become the idiot, the idiot phone, I guess we'll call it that. It's supposed to be called a smartphone, but it actually makes people stupid. Because what it does is it engages the surface level of your brain that wants to be entertained. It doesn't challenge you to do anything if you don't want to be challenged. And this is what most people are interested in. Most people are interested in anything that does not mentally and intellectually challenge them so that they can turn their brains to the off switch and do nothing and just go into a vegetative mental state. So if you want to get rewarded by the algorithms, you're much more likely to be rewarded by the algorithm by keeping it closer to the surface, i.e. entertainment and thoughtless material, like doing dances and silly shit on the camera so people can laugh and be intrigued by it, versus anything with substance, which requires thinking and depth and mental challenges. Those things are not going to get as much attention from the algorithm simply because there are not enough people to supply the attention. But when it comes to surface level stuff, there's millions of people to supply that attention. That's why it's much easier to blow up off entertainment than it is off of education. Human nature. That's not the social media algorithm that is forcing that. The social media algorithm simply reflects what human beings want. So this is why I'm always careful that when I point out social media, I'm always careful to not blame social media for these phenomena that we are seeing these days. Social media is not to blame. Social media is simply reflecting who we are. Social media is a trailing indicator, not a leading indicator. A leading indicator is something that happens before something else happens, such as if you're outside and you see a bunch of big gray clouds up in the sky, there's a good chance that a rainstorm is coming. If you go outside and you see the ground is very damp and it's water all over the ground everywhere, that's a trailing indicator that says it probably rained while you were in the house. If you see the storm clouds up above your head, that's a leading indicator. It's probably going to rain in a moment. You understand? So social media is a trailing indicator. The way social media works, is a trailing indicator of human nature. Our nature says this is what we want. Social media simply reflects what we told it we want. That's all the algorithm is. It's just responding to what people want. And the algorithm sometimes tries to guess. All right, we'll change it this way because based on what we know, this is what we think people know. It's not a random guess. It's a educated guess because they have all the data. All right, we're giving them our data every time you open up your phone. So you're giving them all the data. Based on the education they get from the data, they make a educated guess, and they update their algorithms to reflect that educated guess. That's the way it works. Most people are not interested in substance. Most people would prefer simply to be entertained, so they can turn their brains off and not have to think, as I just explained to you. If you put out material that challenges people to think, to reason, to use the logical sides of their brains, you got to understand the majority of the population is not interested in that because it requires mental effort. And your audience will only grow to be but so large. So you may wonder how somebody can have a lot of substance but still grow a significant audience. And there's myself and many others, people with even bigger audiences than me, who fit this description. Because a lot of people in their audience are there for the things that do not require thinking. In other words, there are a lot of people who follow me on social media who are not looking to be challenged to think, but they still are following me because maybe every once in a while I say something that's entertaining or funny that doesn't require thought. So they're just sticking around waiting for that. All right, the things that require thinking, they ain't paying attention to. This is human nature. I can have a ton of substance, but I can also talk about things that don't require having substance at all for you to understand it. I can talk at a lot of different levels. For example, I can guarantee you that when I put out my episode on Instagram Ask Models, there was a percentage of the audience who did listen to that episode, but was not interested in the very next episode, which was the real cost of the things that you want in life. You can dabble in either audience as you choose, but understand that more attention usually requires a cutting down of substance, and more substance usually leads to less overall attention. This is good news if you're in business and you don't need, let me say that again. The good news if you are in business is that you don't need everybody's attention. You just need the attention of the right people in the business. You don't need everybody's attention, just the right attention from the right people. So sometimes 10 followers are more valuable than 100 followers. If you understand the metrics of your business and understand what actually works in your business, as opposed to, let me just get as many people to see my stuff as possible. If that's what you want to do, you must go the entertainment route. Go the substance route, you will never max out on your visibility. Point number 6. Today's topic, once again, is why the information war will never end. Point number 6. More than ever, facts are just filtered through personal beliefs. This is where we are nowadays. Even when someone presents you the facts, and this applies to all of us, we tend to filter those facts through what we already personally believe and then decide how to respond to them. Again, this is not a new thing. It's always existed as long as human beings have existed, but it's becoming more and more prevalent and having more of an impact on our world these days for the reasons that I've already laid out. Since everyone has their own broadcasting platform and anyone can put out anything at any time, and it's because we can all custom tailor the material that we consume and take in, people's personal beliefs when it comes to information matters more than it's ever mattered before. Because you don't have to listen to anything you don't want to listen to. You don't have to hear anything you don't want to hear. You don't have to agree to anything you don't agree with. And you don't even have to let any information that you decided you don't want to hear to even enter your orbit in the first place. We did not used to have these options of blocking information that we didn't want to hear. Nowadays we have it. You can curate to where the only things you hear are coming from a specific group of entities with whom you've decided you align. And you don't even know what's happening in the outside world, and frankly, it doesn't matter. Back in the day, there may have been 3 channels offering news, but today there are 3 million channels offering news. It's closer to 3 billion channels offering news because each one of us can offer news. So when you're offering what may be considered to be news, if you are not speaking to a person's personal belief, they won't pay attention to you ever, not even for 1 minute or an entire lifetime, if you're not speaking to someone's personal beliefs. Back in the day, again, let's say I hated NBC News. I didn't hate them, but let's just say that I did. At some point, I may have to watch them, even though I hate them, because they're the only source for the information that I'm looking for. I'm trying to get a certain piece of information about what's going on. The only place that is giving me any information is NBC, even though I don't like NBC. These days, if I don't like NBC, I don't ever have to consume anything that has anything to do with NBC. I can block the word NBC. I can block NBC's account on all my socials and only consume material that might be going directly against what NBC says. These days, I have that option. Back in the day, I didn't have that option. You had to work with what you had. And if what you had wasn't shit, you had to work with not shit and make it work. And if you were able to, that made you even more of a superhero. So I might, as again, I said, I might hate NBC News, but every once in a while, they might have a news story that I want to hear and I'll watch it. So these days, I can completely ignore a platform for 80 years and be completely fine because hopefully, if they're any good, they'll still be around. And since everybody can find material that conforms to their personal beliefs and materials, if you are not doing that, someone does not need to go through you at any point to get what they need in terms of information or perspective. So let me say this last part again. Everyone can find material that conforms to their personal feelings and beliefs. So if you are not doing that, all right, being the only source of information, someone does not need to go through you at any point to get what they need in terms of information and perspective. This is the reason why attention is so spread out these days. No one has to listen to any one person talking about a subject because there's a million people talking about it. It doesn't matter if you finding the one that you like best. That's really what it comes down to. And if you're the one who has a message, you need to get better at making sure your message is getting to and reaching the right people who are actually interested. This is the game that we're in. And this is the reason why we're in the information war. All right, so you thought this war would be simple because there's no guns and tanks. It's actually more complicated. Let's recap today's class, which is part 2 of our 2-part mini-series, Why the Information War Will Never End. Number 4, everyone is a broadcaster with their own media platform. And again, everybody's broadcasting. At the same time, you can't consume all of it because it overwhelms you. Number 5, algorithms reward attention over substance. That's not because the algorithm decided. That's because human beings decided. And algorithm is simply a reflection of what human beings want. Number 6. Where am I here? Number 6. More than ever, facts are filtered through personal beliefs. Now, this is not a new phenomenon and has always existed as long as human beings have existed, but it's becoming more and more prevalent and has more of an impact on our world because everybody has a broadcasting platform and no one has to listen to anything they don't want to listen to. So you can just find someone whose personal beliefs align with yours and you can just accept their facts and nobody else's. And who can stop you? Answer is nobody. That's why we're in the information war, folks. So y'all better strap up and get your artillery. All that said, here's your artillery. Work on your game university. Have me as your direct coach. Be able to explain your position, explain your point, explain your argument in a way that it is completely airtight, that you can get your point across to the right audience and know that they are in alignment with you and you are in alignment with them. Those people come into your world. That is the foundation upon which you build your business. All that happens at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Have me as your direct coach and let's get to it. Again, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all